Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Mental Corner podcast, the show where I bring on guests from all different backgrounds to talk all the things mental health. I'm your host, Harry Potvin, and today I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Callen McGibbon. Callen is the strength and conditioning coach of 3 Olympic golds and the founder of REPerformance, which is a program that aims to provide the opportunity to excel in sport and life through fitness. Callen was such a blast to have on, and I really want to thank him again for coming on and having this discussion with me. And for everyone listening, I'm just sending love to each and every one of you. The world is nuts, and sometimes it's hard not to get sucked into a rabbit hole of doom and gloom, and it's hard not to feel helpless about some things. So just take a break if you need it, take some self-care if you need it. Just do what you have to do, and I'm sending love your way. Now, before we get into the episode today, guys, you know the drill. If you're listening, please like, comment, share, subscribe, give 5 stars if you're on that podcast platform. Share with someone who might want to hear this episode. It's a really great one, and I can't wait for you to listen. I'll talk to y'all very soon. Have a great rest of your day. Peace. We're good to go. Callen, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thanks for having me. You just caught me taking a sip of water.
Yeah, perfect timing. So before we get into anything, like at what point in your life did you decide that high performance coaching was in the cards for you?
Well, um, it was more of like a falling of the cards than a choice. I didn't really have the intent to go into high performance coaching. It just kind of happened out of a fluke. So I was involved in like a industrial accident in Toronto while I was working in the construction industry. This young guy lost his life, and I tried to save him, and I couldn't. And then my idea was that I would become a first aid and CPR instructor, and I would teach first aid and CPR to construction workers on the job site in job site trailers. And I would buy these vans and get a crew, and then we would do that because I kind of felt, it was just kind of awful that I didn't have the tools to save them. So past that, while I was becoming certified, I was working out because I had always kind of exercised. It was the thing that I grew up being influenced by my mom and stuff to do. So I was working out, and I met this guy at a gym I was working out called Fitness West by the name Ian Walling. And at the time, he was Mr. All Natural of the universe. And I just started talking to him, and he just said, "Hey, like, you got a great personality. You should be a trainer." And I was like, "What is that?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, I teach people how to work out." And I was like, "Oh." So I said, "Well, what do you need to do that?" And he said, "You need first aid and CPR." And it just happened to be. So I'd love to tell you it was like, another story or something that sounds kind of, more academically sound, but that was really how I got into it. And I just kind of started there, and it was a long time ago. So, I'm 40, turning 46 this year. So, it's 23 years ago. And the industry, really, strength conditioning industry, hadn't even matured into what it is today, right? Like I'm really watching it over the last decade really mature. And because it's such a young profession. When I started, there wasn't even a strength conditioning coach, I think, employed by a university in Canada.
Right.
So there wasn't even a position. It didn't even exist, right? So, and now obviously it's evolved. It's a great career and a long hours career, but it's a great career.
Yeah, no, I bet. Yeah, it's funny because when I was starting to get into the whole strength and conditioning thing for university sports, I thought the whole idea of a fitness trainer was the stereotypical, like, super roided up dude who's jacked and has no neck and can't put his arms down. So when the trainers came in, I was like, what is this? Like, what is going on? They're like, here, you have to stretch, you have to do that. I'm like, this is not what I expected at all.
Yeah, I spent a decade in the university environment at Laurentian University as a strength conditioning coach there with almost all the programs. And some programs didn't do it, but almost all the programs. And it was a real you have a mix, right? Like some later on in that experience, like I would say the last 5 years of it, uh, you know, a lot of kids were coming in with a good like have been exposed to strength conditioning,
Hmm.
so they kind of had an understanding of what athletic development was all about outside of their sport. And at the beginning, when I started, they really didn't. There was a majority of them that had no idea, right? Like
Right.
they didn't have an experience. They'd just done kind of whatever kind of their parents or friends or whatever had told them to do in order to help them be better at their sport, be stronger, whatever. Um, but yeah, it's crazy to watch it from my perspective, like how much it's changed. So, you needed like you needed to be CanFit certified when I started, which was like the organization that Patch Adams started that owns Good Life to be a certified trainer, right? Like, which was a smart business model on his point. So, and that was it, right? Like you didn't need anything else. Um, and I don't even think you needed that. I think you probably could just get liability insurance and probably train people. Gyms. That's probably all the gyms ask for. So, and now like I wouldn't even hire anybody unless they have a kinesiology degree. You know,
Right.
like
Yeah.
so how
Right.
fast has that changed, right? Like it's crazy how fast it's changed.
Yeah, yeah, there's a bit of a difference there.
Yeah.
Speaking on that change, when you were growing up before all of this and coming up, did you ever play sports? I'm assuming you played sports as a kid.
No, I
No.
didn't play sports. I did wrestle
Hmm.
in high school, um, which I enjoyed quite a lot. Um, but I didn't have any sport experiences. A little bit of soccer in grade 7 and 8, but I grew up in a really rural area, like in a trailer by Hoda Valley Trailer Park, just outside of Barrie. So we didn't have like anything, right? Like there's no community center, there's no place to go and play like pickup basketball or a field where there was a school we could play soccer or anything.
Hmm.
And I had a single mom, and yeah, we just didn't do a lot of stuff, didn't have access to a lot of things. I did like she'd take me cross country skiing, so did stuff like that, hiking, a lot of outdoorsy type things, that were low, like no cost, right? Like
Right.
cross country skis we would get because people would be throwing them out, and we would just grab them at the end of their driveway. So, so
Yeah. Yeah.
it was just stuff that you could do for like no money. But my mom always knew like physical activity was really important. Like, just she just kind of intuitively understood that. So I grew up like in it, right? Like it was part of like what I was kind of grew up knowing what to do, right? Like so I think when later on it became part of my life, it was always kind of there, you know?
Hmm.
Um, so it just kind of became what I did. And then, I obviously took courses and became specialized, and that all stuff came as I kind of ended up in this career that I fell in love with, and then kind of the educational piece came after, right? So,
Right. Yeah. Now going through that whole trailer park experience and living in that environment, like this is a stupid question, but was it tough for you as a kid to live in that, or did you like as a child just think that was what everyone was going through?
um, actually, it's actually a great question.
Thank you.
So, and I've had a hard time with this because I think I wore it for a really long time as like something I didn't want people to know, like my background.
Hmm.
um because I didn't want them to. I don't know why. It's silly, right? Like I shouldn't hide it at all.
Hmm.
But I don't know, I guess I didn't want people to judge me or think less of me or something like that, right? But really looking back at it, I never ever felt like hard done by or poor or that things were tough. Like I watched my mom like have moments of struggle, but she never put that on me.
Mm.
Like I didn't feel it. Like there was nothing ever put down towards me, right? Like she carried stuff, and I saw her once in a while break down. And but it was she was so incredible about like surrounding me with just positive energy that it really didn't affect me. I think it actually built me
Mm.
to be like who. It built the characteristics I have today and the determination I have today to just continually push and strive and try to do more, whether it be for my family or my companies or whatever. Like it's a huge foundational piece as to like who I am today.
Right. Yeah, man. Shout out to mom.
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to mom.
Mm.
She was crazy. Like I remember one winter, it got so cold and all the pipes froze under the trailer, and she would like climb underneath with like those little propane torches and like try to thaw out the pipes so we could have water. Like,
Mm.
and then we had, I'm dating myself, but we had treble lights, like just these like when you used to have 100-watt light bulbs, not like LEDs that use
Yeah.
tons of hydro, and they were hot. She'd have those hanging underneath the trailer to try to like keep enough heat, right? And underneath the
Man.
trailer to stop the pipes from freezing. And like never a feeling of like, things are tough. Like anything ever put on me is always just a, positive vibe.
Mm.
Crazy.
Yeah.
She's like a superhero. Legit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's
Legit.
wild. Yeah,
Yeah.
legit. Man.
Mm.
Have the Avengers called her yet? No, I'm kidding. But
They should.
yeah, they should, seriously. Now, was did going through all of that, I know you said that you never really felt the weight, but you still had the experiences. Was that ever a driving motivator for you moving forward with like your companies and where you're at today?
I think I got something to prove for sure.
Hmm.
Like, I guess if that maybe is something that formulated, like, I definitely have a massive determination and passion for like a huge impact. Of- I thought it was maybe money before, which I think most young entrepreneurs kind of sort of get stuck in.
Hmm.
Not maybe in the beginning you have this passion idea you want to fuel, and then you start getting into it and you realize like the importance of cash flow, and you're like, oh my god, like we need money. And then you start to get focused on the money, and then everything starts to go wrong, and then you refocus back on the product, and everything starts going right again. Um, so I think there's been times when obviously there is a financial driver, um, but I mean, for the most part, I just want to make a really huge impact because really fitness, being involved in my life from such a young age, looking, it really was like this, it was my way out. I really believe that, like looking back, like it literally provided this framework and security for me to kind of have the mental strength to get through adversities,
Hmm.
and not unbeknownst to me as a kid. And now I'm like so passionate about this industry because I saw, looking back at with my age and my wisdom now, I realized it was literally the thing that was enabled me to like not make bad choices when I was with groups of friends, not feel insecure that I was undersized or whatever. Like, um, you know, go to bed, and
Right.
get good night's sleep. Have the ability to have an imagination and the ability to like go and do things that I wanted to do. Right. Like I remember when we moved out of the country finally in grade 8 into Barrie, um, you know, I would not even think twice about going like 2 hours on my skateboard across town to see a friend. Like I didn't even think about it. Like
Hmm.
riding for 2 hours in one direction to go see someone, right? Like, or 3 or 4. I didn't even care. Or I would jog. I
Right.
didn't have I think my physical, the way I grew up approaching fitness took away so many barriers I would have had in order to go and approach life.
Mm.
And I was able to get all these experiences, and make good, solid choices. And now I'm so passionate about, you know, getting more and more people to embrace it because, and it's so funny that I ended up in the performance world, but really it's got nothing to do with that now for me. Like I still work with NHL athletes and stuff like that and some Olympians, but it's about like the mental aspect of it. Like I know what it can do through my experience of where I came from and where I am now. And I know that the impact it has on your mental health. And now I just want to like empower everybody to do it. Like
Mm.
just whatever the barriers are, we got to figure out what the barrier is to why you can't or having problems exercising, and we got to put it in there. We got to break that barrier down, and we got to get it in you because it changes your life. And
Right.
I just now I'm just driven to try to do stuff like this. Meet you. You're a great guy. You talked to me. We talked about like getting on your show and talking to your audience, and that's it. Like
Hmm.
now we got to get out and talk about it. And lots of people have great angles to talk about it, right? But that's my experience, right? Mine is like, it literally gave me the ability to take on things. And when things have been tough in my life, like it was always there for me.
Mm.
It like, where did it go? It didn't leave. All I had to
Right.
do was show up, right, with a heartbeat, and it was
Right.
right there, like ready for me. Okay, things are tough right now. I'm gonna go for a jog and I'm gonna think about it. You
Mm.
know, it's I'm gonna go lift, and I'm gonna get a break, and I'm gonna have this moment of, that's about me getting better, and you feel good about yourself because you're doing something for yourself, and well, that's a perpetual effect, right? Like now you're back on the right track again.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, no, no, everything you're saying, man, it nails it. But every like all the mentality that you're talking about, I find that a lot of people I know and myself personally, we gain that from sports as well. Is that, when you were talking about how you weren't insecure that you were small, you can gain that confidence through sport. You can gain the resilience through sport. You can gain like time management through sport. This is why I promote sports all the time, is because it gave me these skills. And there was actually the mental side is so important. There was this Instagram story I saw, I think it was yesterday. It was Tyson Fury, the boxer, and he was, I don't know what he was doing. He was in the middle of a plank and he was filming himself while he was planking, and he was talking about how like your body's not tired. The mind's telling you you're tired. The limiting beliefs that you have are telling you that you are tired. That's not your body. And I think that's such an important, because for me personally, I had so many experiences in university swimming where my mind was like, "No, you're done," even though like my body could have kept going.
yeah, I've seen. I think that's the piece of athletics, like you know the the inspirational piece of athletics, right? Is that maybe is that the thing that causes us to be? I mean, their physiology is one thing, and their genetics are obviously another thing. But is maybe the root of it when we watch the Olympics and sporting events and stuff? Is it really like just the inspiration of the drive that it takes to achieve? You know,
Mm,
is that how much percentage of that actually makes up being excited about watching sports, or being driven and passionate about going to get a sporting experience or participating in sport, right?
right. Yeah.
I think it's probably a lot when we really break it down.
Hmm.
You know, we're
Yeah.
just chasing that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a big reason why I was always, personally, I was always so fascinated with like Michael Phelps, because in the swim world, the guy did all the events, all of them, and his Olympic schedule was painful. Any normal swimmer would just be on a stretcher, and he just did it because he loved it, and he was so laser focused and knew what to do and just kept pushing. It was so fascinating. Like, how can a human being do that?
Yeah, I find like I was well, not now because Laurentian swim team's gone, but I was a head strength coach for Laurentian's swim club for, I think, 10 years, almost 10 years.
Hmm.
Head coach there, Phil Parker, just an incredible human being, and met some incredible kids. And honestly, going into that sport, I didn't really have like a good understanding of it. So I had to do some research the summer that we decided to implement strength conditioning into the program. And so I wanted to talk to Phil, and I'd go to swim deck and kind of get an understanding of what practices were like, and kind of talk to the athletes a little bit, get a background from them, and try to understand where his volumes were. And when you really, I don't think a lot of people have a really good understanding of how incredibly intense uh, competitive swimming is,
Mm.
uh, and how much of a physiological demand it is to perform that way. Um, so when I started doing their programming, it was a really cool. I got really into it, for the first couple of years, because I was just learning so much, right? Getting feedback from the athletes as to like, okay, well, that's not working because now we got a group of kids that have sore shoulders, and like, just try, like, in the beginning, thinking that creating more, you know, uh, shoulder strength would maybe be result in a positive impact, as opposed to like, and more lat strength, because creating more pull, and you know thinking about ways to train that, and then realizing antagonistically was always a better approach, and then breaking down how many no, I'm totally underestimating the value of like explosive squats,
Mm,
because I didn't realize that, they would be competing short course for the majority of the season, and
yeah.
they're turning, they're doing like 25 flip turns in a race, and then adding up that volume of turning and the amount of squatting they're doing actually in a race, and then learning that like they're faster underwater than over, so that's why they spend the majority of the time under the surface than above the surface. So they're trying to get as much power off the walls as possible. And in short course, if you got a good wall kick, you got a good turn, you got a good kick off the wall, you can make up for swim stroke. So, like starting to then analyze each athlete and where were they in that spectrum, and trying to bring programming. It was a really cool sport to be a strength conditioning coach for, and a very unique bond within the athletes,
Mm,
because it's an individual sport, yet it's a team sport at the same time. So I found like the psychology of the swim team very cool. Generally, a lot of actually highly intelligent kids were on this, at least at LU, like very academically driven. But statistically, a lot of the cardiovascular um, college sports have higher academic averages, which is
hmm.
kind of an interesting thing. So obviously, massive amounts of cardiovascular activity are good for your brain, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, um, it was like, but every year at Laurentian, and I have friends across the country that are strength coaches at universities, and cross country running teams and swimming teams are always have the highest amount of all academic all Canadians than any other sport. So
Mm,
I think it's the cardiovascular base, right? And that individual sports too, I think, drive a little bit more determination, focus, a little bit more self responsibility. Um, Not that team sports don't either, but I'm just
right.
trying to pull. There's got to be some correlations here somewhere, right? The result to the academic impact.
I mean, it's no surprise to swimmers that we're some of the smartest. I,
Coming from an ex-varsity swimmer,
yeah. I
makes
mean,
sense.
non-biased, non-biased.
Yeah, of course.
um, yeah. No, I mean, it's really unfortunate what happened at LU with the programs and everything. But I love that swim team. I told you off camera when we first met. They got under my nerves, and they know it because they were just so passionate and they would cheer so loud. And I had a friend on the team, Felipe, and we were facing at divisionals, and he was on the other side of the deck and they were beating us, and he'd look at me and clap really hard. And I just, oh my God, it frustrated me to no end. But that whole team is just super, not only are they passionate, but they were always super friendly and super welcoming, and just the team atmosphere. You don't get that much in some of the teams in swimming,
Yeah.
because a lot of the time, it is an individual sport, and sometimes people take that and just run with it as opposed to focusing on the team aspect. But man, I love that LU team. It's really unfortunate what happened to them.
Yeah, it is. It's a very sad thing, and I don't know the details, and I can't really comment on the position of the university and stuff. But uh, as a casualty of war, I guess maybe,
Hmm.
you know, uh, and it's really sad. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
great kids, great program, always competitive,
mm,
right? It's a shame
yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. Now, you were part of Canada's Special Olympic powerlifting team. How did you get into that realm of sports?
Okay, so I was we were hiring a new strength conditioning coach for the training company that I ran at Laurentian University. So to make that make sense, Laurentian didn't have an internal staff for physiotherapy and all that stuff. They outsourced it. So I own the company that was responsible for all that
Mm,
work.
hmm.
And so we were hiring, excuse me, a new strength conditioning coach, and hired this guy Kevin. He came in, he was great, and after he'd already been hired, uh, he was like, "Hey, like I can't take clients on Thursday nights." And I was like, "Well, how come?" And he's like, "Well, I volunteer for Special Olympics." And I'm like, "Well, first of all, you should have told me that before you got hired, because that's awesome."
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Like,
Seriously, why would
like
you leave that out?
why would you leave that out? And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, no problem. Awesome. So he was sending the email one day at the desk. We have like, I've always believed in like an open shared workspace.
Hmm.
So our desks are always in the same room, because I don't want any barriers between questions ever, right? Like I always want, and I always taken a lot of interns. So I always want there to be like talk in the office, like positive talk about like what we're doing, what's going on. If there's a problem, you just voice it right away.
Mm-hmm.
So he I see him in the corner and he's kind of upset and he's typing, he's kind of slamming his keyboard. Like, what's going on? He's like, God, the place where he was taking the Special Olympics team at the time was giving him a hard time about things he was doing with them, and members were making comments. And I said, oh, well, if they're giving you a hard time, like, let's just bring them to LU.
Mm.
We just move the team from where they are now to LU. So I went to the LU, the administrator. I said, listen, like, going to bring the Special Olympics team here. We're going to volunteer. Like, will you help us out? So they said, yeah, no problem. So we had a varsity strength conditioning room that was just for varsity athletes. So we rented it and we put them in there. And I I went one night when Kevin was there, and I went and helped him, and I got hooked. That was it. As soon as I went the first night, I was like, this is awesome. And just an incredible group of people, and just a very rewarding atmosphere to be a part of and to be contributing of. And I took over, and then Kevin moved on from our company, ended up going into got a great position within the military, and I kept it, and I've been running it ever since. And I managed to coach an athlete to like the Special Olympics, like the World Games in
Mm.
Abu Dhabi in 2018, and get 7 gold medals.
Wow.
And I actually ended up being part of the Canadian coaching team. So uh, pretty cool experience. We sent in the powerlifting team, we sent 5 over to Abu Dhabi, and we had 17 golds. We cleaned up. So, because they get a gold in the squat, and and then over like squat, bench, deadlift, and then overall, right? So there's 4 potential medals per
Mm.
athlete, right? So we ended up crushing it, but set some records too that still stand. And and yeah, I've been doing it ever since. And even when I moved out of LU, I've always volunteered. I've been volunteering with Special Olympics for years now, and I really love it. It's made me, it's opened my eyes to something that, and hopefully I can share it on this platform, and it's understood the right way. Um, you can Donating money is a fantastic thing to do, and I think everyone should take a portion of what they do and give it back, right?
Mm.
Whatever fits your lifestyle, right? Like if it's $1, it's $1. If it's $10,000 a month, it's whatever, right? It doesn't matter. Just proportionally, you should be putting something back uh, into the universe with respect to that type of energy. Um, but I realized, like, unless you have people that boots on the ground volunteers, the money means nothing.
Right.
And so I've always been a part of it, and I always will do it. Even there's times when I'm stressed out because I got kids and stuff and businesses, and I'm just, but I realize as soon as they come in and I get a hug from everybody, and I get a million thank yous all the time, and I love yous, and it's awesome. It's an incredible thing to do.
Yeah, I
So,
was just gonna say, does it put life into perspective when you go through that process of helping these athletes, not just the Special Olympics team, but like let's say the LU swim team or other LU sports, like helping them get to where they want to go and just seeing the impact that you personally have on their personal journey? Does that ever put life into perspective for you or change the way you think about everything?
um, I guess it for me, it's always been like I just feel part of it. I don't really feel responsible.
Right.
So I'm like this piece of their lives, or we've connected, whether it be a varsity program for 4 years of your swimming career, or a Special Olympics athlete. Um, I'm a part of your life in this way, and I'm very fortunate that the time I'm involved with you, it's involved in, like, bringing your physical state to a better place, which obviously has a massively empowering effect on their mental well-being. And so um I see the impact of it. I think that's where I get the kind of like the juice. Like, I see the impact of my participation in that, and how it affects them. And
Mm.
I get really, like, motivated and excited about life because of that. um More so than maybe, like, do I feel responsible for it. I just, I feel grateful to be a part of that. uh, you know, and I've been a part of it at some pretty cool levels. Like I've been very fortunate in my career. I've been able to attract some great athletes to me and achieve some really cool stuff, right? Like a couple gold medals with the women's Olympic hockey team through athletes I train there. And so uh, I just feel a part of it all, really.
Hmm.
Just a piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does it
Yeah.
put life in perspective? I think it makes me realize that you can do like anything that you set your mind to and you have a good plan. You can set your mind to something, but if you don't have any action steps and a plan, then your just mind is set to it every day. Nothing actually happens.
Right.
Um, so you got to have an action step and a plan. So, but that part's cool. It's made me much better in business being a strength coach because of like just the planning and the methodology and like the always looking for like some type of uh, win,
Mm.
right? Like so looking for forward progress all the time and designing something to have forward progress. It's made me much better in business for sure.
Yeah. I can imagine. Yeah, that was the interesting part for me personally was when I got into coaching as opposed to being an athlete was when I was a swimmer, I put so much pressure on the coach. Not maybe not externally, but in my own head, saying like, "Oh, if I had the right coach, then I would do better." Or, this coach didn't give me what I wanted, or I should be doing better because the coach did this. When in reality, I mean, you just said it, you're just a piece, and I like a lot of athletes think the same way. I've heard it from teammates where they're like, if I had a better coach, I'd be doing better. It's like, or if you changed your mindset, then maybe you'd do better. If you worked a little harder at the things you're not good at, like that was my thing. Is when I got into coaching and I started coaching these kids, I realized that portion of it is that you're a piece as opposed to the whole solution.
Yeah, for sure. Well said. It,
Yeah.
and I've always tried to hold that one, in check, right? Like, so, and it keeps the responsibility and accountability on the athlete when you do that too, right? Like,
Hmm.
you're not taking on that accountability for something that you can't have control of. Like, I don't have any control over what happens in res.
Yeah.
I
No.
wish I did. I wish I did,
For real.
uh, but I don't, right? Or the calf, like what food
Mm,
choices they're making in the calf. Like I don't have any control over that stuff. So I'm this piece and I'm gonna make an impact in that piece. I'm gonna bring my role. I'm gonna over deliver. I'm gonna do 110%. I'm gonna provide you with the best possible service programming, education that you could ask for. Um, your role is to, apply it all,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a couple athletes that wish you were in control of that calf or res for that matter. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm sure though, especially the swimmers, because practice is like in the pool on deck at 5:30, right?
Yep.
Warm up swimming at 5:45. So when you're in res and things are going in res the way things go in res, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, um, it's hard on the swimmers, right? Because they get up so early. Everyone else is waking up at 10. Like,
Oh
they're up
man.
like, dude, I'm up in 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, no, my roommate, I would walk out when he was coming in to go to bed. I'd be leaving for practice. And I'm like, "What are you?" He's like, "I'm going to bed." I got to swim. Completely different lifestyles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Now with all the athletes that you have been involved with on all these different levels that you've had, what are some of the common misconceptions about mental and physical fitness that some athletes have?
Uh, I think a common misconception that athletes have about themselves is that they um, can't acknowledge like down feelings.
Mm,
So they just have to kind of they have to bury feelings like very, very quickly. Like they're generally like a very positive group. They're obviously very driven and forward focused. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be in that scenario in life, right? Like you've especially swimming, the volume when you're growing up as a kid is gigantic, right? Like you're
yeah.
at the pool 16 hours, 18 hours a week. So um, that's a massive responsibility on a young child. So they're obviously a little they're obviously, and hockey and all the other sports, we're going to combine them into one lump here. So
Hmm.
you obviously have a driven type mentality, and you're obviously super positive. And the negative side of that I find with the athletes is they bury when things don't go right. They don't allow themselves to feel upset about it. They think it's like they just have to bury it and go on, bury it and go on, bury it and go on. And it's okay to feel like, you know, it's okay to feel like, even in an emotion, like, let's say you get injured, right? Like, injuries aren't your fault, let's say, right? Like, let's say it's like a contact injury. I don't know, like someone hits you in on pool deck and you sprain your ankle or something, right? Like, or I don't know, like something fluke, your training program's solid, your swim volumes are right, and you tear a muscle in your rotator cuff,
Yeah.
right? Like you tear something, infraspinatus or something. So it's okay to feel cheated. Like, you can't dwell on it, but athletes, I find, will not even accept that emotion in the first place. They just won't allow it to happen. And then they get this, like, oh, I'm just going to drill in tighter, right? I'm just going to drill in tighter. And they keep drilling in tighter, and they just keep winding up more and more and more, and building up more expectations on themselves and more pressure on themselves, until like something really bad happens, right? Like, they really break down. And if you had just had that moment where, like, this isn't fair, and cry, like, this sucks, like, this should have never happened to me, you're right, you know what I mean, it should have never happened to you. And it's okay to feel like that feeling. You can feel it, and you can feel cheated, and you can cry. I think crying is something that athletes don't do well. They all do it great when they win, right?
Yeah.
They all
Right.
burst out in tears. They're so emotional, like, oh my God, I won. And they have these tears of joy, but they're not really good at, like, being soft, or not soft, not very good at being vulnerable.
Mm.
And you know and they end up in this pressure tank, right? And uh and unfortunately, a lot of them suffer, like, from some, like, they slip into, like, states of depression, because they are constantly being let down by their expectation, which is being created because of this lack of acknowledging that sometimes things don't work out, and it's okay to feel those emotions, rather than just grind in a little tighter and try to get further. I'm not saying you don't need to tune up your programming and push yourself harder. I'm just saying you need to take a break, feel it. Yeah, it feels like crap. Okay. If you need to talk to somebody, and then, okay, like, what do we need to do? Right? Like,
Right.
what's the action steps to move forward now? Okay, well, we got to go to physio, we got to fix your shoulder or whatever, right? Like, they're going to do that stuff anyways. So why are we skipping that part? That's what I see in the athlete world that's misunderstood,
Yeah.
from an old guy watching it. That's my perspective of it.
Yeah. No, when I got injured in swimming, like it was a really bad back injury, and the first thing I thought was that's not supposed to happen. That wasn't part of my plan. What the hell? And then I just got so angry at myself for letting it happen.
Yeah, right. Like, it was your fault.
Like, why did you choose to get a back injury, man?
you know, and so, yeah, that's the part that I find is really, where there's a lot of work to be done in sport, is on that side for sure. Like, the mental aspect, they're all driven, so
Hmm.
you don't really need that side so much.
Right.
you know
Yeah. Now, how, like, on that topic of like understanding the mental aspect just as much as the physical aspect, how how can, in your personal opinion, what's the fine line between too competitive and the right amount of driven slash competitiveness in an athlete?
Whew. um I would have to answer and say, there is, in the most successful athletes I've ever worked with, their level of compete is the highest.
Yeah.
So you need massive levels of compete to have the drive to get to the top. So I don't think there's a level of competitiveness that is too high. I think there is a um maybe like an, oh, I think it goes back to what I was saying before. like there's an on in that competitiveness, there's an there be the unhealthy side of that competitiveness is if you are unable to process negative emotions you're having along the way,
Mm.
you know? And so, but yeah, you need it. Like all the best ones I've ever worked with, like are just like it's uber off the chart, like everything, like rest times between exercises, like um I've been training the Felino brothers. They play in the NHL for like, I think Nick's might get his thousandth game this year. I don't know how many seasons he's played, and his brother Marcus. And like in between sets, like it's, who can flip their water bottle and have it land on the arm of the treadmill. Like it's like there is nothing that's not a competition ever.
Right.
Nothing. So, and that's carbon copy across the group, uh, they're all like that. So I think you need it. You just need to make sure that you can process negative emotions properly. That's all.
Right.
So that you don't, you know, misunderstand people that are around you's intentions of when they're playing with you, right? Like, or when they're doing a game of pickup with you, you're not misunderstanding their intentions because you're so competitive that you just have to win. You've processed enough emotions along the way that you can keep things balanced, right? Whether you're with friends or you're actually in a competitive environment or you're in a training environment, you can keep the moment in context, but you still have to compete to win every time. You're never going to take that. You're never going to breed that out of them.
Right. Yeah. I love it. Yeah, and I guess the other side of it, when you have a competitive mindset, or you're just an athlete in general, like we've seen this the last 2 years where sports have been completely taken away. Like
Yeah.
I talk to the Guelph swim team all the time, and they had no swimming, and then they had a little bit of training, and then they went back to nothing, and then there was the promise of swim meets, and then there was nothing again. So when you're in that constant, oh, maybe you'll get it, no, like a dog on a treadmill with a hamburger in front of it, like for if you were with these athletes, well, you are with these athletes. Like, what do you tell them to keep them focused and to keep them feeding that competitive spirit that is kind of being neglected in the sense of sports being gone?
Um, I would say the biggest thing we do, like in our training center here, is just like make sure that we have drills that are competitive in nature in order to fuel that. When it comes to like when they get frustrated or someone voices like this sucks, like why can't we play hockey or whatever, right, or swim? Um, you just reinforce that we're going to, this isn't going to be forever. You just be a positive influence in that for them. But I don't, again, like I don't not let them feel frustrated though,
Right.
right? Like yeah, you want to you want to validate their emotion, right? So you say like this sucks, and like you're right, it does suck. Do you like how's it feel, right? Like you have to validate that how they're feeling. You
Hmm.
say how's it feel? It feels horrible. I hate it. And I'm like, I understand that. It makes sense that you hate it. I don't. I hate it, right?
Right.
So you have to validate it, and then you can move forward and be like, so what are we gonna do? Like how many people on your team right now? There's 40 people on the swim team. How many are training right now that you know of right now? Well, there's 10 of us. So there's 30 that aren't. So 20% of the team is training right now. Do you think that's probably fair to say that 20% of most teams, 20% of the athletes are training and 80% are not? Yeah. So how much better are you going to be when we actually get back to the pool?
Mm.
Like you bring them to validate it. Don't disregard the feeling of negative, and then you bring them to like, okay, well, what's the advantage we have right now that someone else doesn't have? What are we doing that maybe others aren't? What can we do right now that would make us prepare us, bring the preparation curve further ahead than everyone else once you get back to the pool? What can we be doing right now?
Hmm.
And now you start, okay, we're on track. This is what we're doing, right? And now we're back in that positive feedback loop. But you can't disregard the negative. Can't bury it. You gotta process it. And labeling it, you know, is the quickest way as someone in someone's life that's going through something, right? Acknowledging the emotion and labeling it for them is critical. And as soon as you do that, I think it's called your amygdala, like instantly starts to calm down, and they don't that emotion isn't processed as dramatically. I'm gonna butcher that stuff, but you can listen to Dr. Andrew Huberman. He's got a pretty cool podcast. He's a neurobiologist, and that's where I picked up. That's he can give you all the scientific terms, but I just remember the process. I'm like, okay, well, that's why that guy figured it out. He studies brains. This is why it happens. So this is what we got to do, right?
Right.
I bring it down to the coach level,
Yeah, right. No, yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
this is how we use his 20 years of research. This is how we apply it,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
So
Yeah. No, man, yeah, I hope athletes listen to that because when I was a swimmer, if you took me as a swimmer with my lack of my lack of understanding of mental fitness and mental wellness, and you put this pandemic on me, I'd be a goner. So I hope that athletes listen to that because it's so important to like accept and validate the feelings that you're having, but not don't let them marinate because
no,
that's where we get in trouble is where we marinate in these woe is me feelings or these like the world sucks feelings, which it does, frankly. But
sure.
yeah, you can't marinating is the worst thing.
And and what I find is by not acknowledging them, you actually marinate them
Right. Yeah.
because they don't go. They're just in there. They're
Yeah.
not going anywhere. There's this there's this kind of underlying feeling of it that never goes away because you haven't acknowledged it,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So you have to.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's the only the visualization I can have right now is like you put some a loose piece of bread is falling into the toaster and you ignore it. You're like, oh, it's fine, and then you keep using the toaster and it keeps burning, and then your freaking toaster burns down. I don't know why that's stuck in my head, but that's kind of how I envision that whole marinating thing.
That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, whatever. Hopefully, someone uses that. So my last question for you, Callen, is your company REPerformance. Like, when did that come about? What is it? How can people find it?
So that was the again just wanting to make sure that kids uh grow up with the skills and understanding and knowledge base to take care of their own health. So I have a family of four, and my co-founder Nick Foligno, I mentioned him earlier. He we started this thing, and he's got a family of three, and we're just looking at our kids, and always wanting to seeing how the environment they're growing up in, and seeing that exercise and stuff, and yoga and meditation and are kind of they're just engulfed in this stuff all the time, right? And seeing how it's affecting them growing up, and just like, well, how could we do more? So we I'm kind of like an get to it action guy, right? So like, how can we do more? I'm like, I don't know. So I'm like, well, let's build a software platform that could help coaches develop kids. And we wanted to kind of help rural areas. So like in Northern Ontario, for example, where I am up at Sudbury, you know, uh, the Sudbury Laurentian Swim Club. So SLSC, that's our junior club before you get to university, right?
Hmm.
When they have to like go to compete against somebody, right? They got to drive like to the Sioux, which is 3 hours. They got to go to Toronto, which is 5. Like, and kids down in Southern Ontario with the power of proximity, you can be 30 minutes. You could be at another club's pool deck, and you can experience those things, right? And you can see what the competition looks like on a more frequent basis, and coaches can talk, and there's just more of a it's easier to bring the whole group up, right?
Hmm.
And so our idea was that if we created this software where we could standardize testing, we could basically connect all these rural communities and lump them into like one big pool. And then we could compare them regionally and say, okay, well, Timmins, Ontario, cardiovascularly, you're way ahead of all the kids in your age group, kids of 14 that are swimmers, compared to all these other regions. But in, pull power, pull strength, you're below. So it would give the Timmins, the community of Timmins that are swimming or whatever sport it was in, it would give them the insights into how to help develop these kids so they could be more competitive in larger environments because of the distance, right? It's just so hard to connect with one another. So that's what we started, and then over the years it just morphed into having a bigger impact. It morphed into education. So why don't we, if we want to really reach every single kid, where is every single kid? Because the reality is, like, only 1% of kids play competitive sports past high school.
Hmm.
So, that's a pretty small number. So what's actually happening with these kids after that, right? And it's a small percentage of kids that are in competitive sports. So, and they're getting access to all this training and information about strength conditioning and physical development. And what are these other kids getting? So if we actually want to reach every kid, how do we do it? And it's like, well, we got to go to phys ed. So let's build a tool for phys ed teachers that they can, press play on just one click, that can basically build customized training plans for every single student, that's geared exactly to their needs. So we use AI in order to make sure that training plans are geared exactly to every student's needs. And we provide resources for teachers, and we database it all for teachers in order to get rid of paper in schools, in order to obviously, make a big, have a better ecological footprint for schools, which a lot of schools are obviously mandating getting rid of paper anyway, so that fits. Um, and really connecting phys ed teachers to one another. We have like a marketplace option so they can share resources with one another, and really make sure that these kids are building healthy habits for life. And that's how it kind of started, and that's where it is now. So now we're, onboarding teachers across Canada, and we have a pilot in Sweden and the UK, and we just launched in the US. And you know, we got thousands and thousands of kids every day that are learning. And our platform is not about like uh, learning from like strength conditioning world. I've had athletes from strength conditioning that I've worked with that come to me after and are like, "Hey, can you make me a program?" I'm like, "Well, fuck, I didn't do my job, right?" Like,
Yeah.
I want them to understand how to build their own program. I want them to have the responsibility, right, and the knowledge base to be able to do it. So I've taken that error in my ways and made sure that this platform is actually like, it's more of a differentiated learning experience. So the students are actually in control of, like, with bumpers, they're in
Yeah.
control of picking exercises and things like that, but it's kind of guided autonomy. So this AI software is selecting this group of exercises that's appropriate for them with sets and reps, but they're able to pick from that group. So they have some autonomy. So now they're able to pick and swap and do things that they want to learn, that they want to try. And now they're in control of the learning experience, which is how you get them hooked, right?
Mhm.
And the teacher just uses the software to run reflection days so they can see, their improvement. And that's a great thing about tech too, is the kids can see, how much progress they've made, and they can reflect on how things feel. And,
Mhm.
we've put yoga in it now. So we have yoga videos that kids can watch, and it gets phys ed past the classroom, right? Like, kids can access this thing, you know, 24 hours a day. So we actually have letters from parents that, said, "Hey, this is great. Like, I've actually done a workout with my kid at home." We have 33% of the kids that are on the platform right now work out outside of school in the software.
Mm.
So they're actually using it like at home, right? And my wife and I have kids, and you know, I'm involved as a parent in science and math. Like, I know there's a quiz on Friday, let's say, right? So I would say to our son, "Hey, there's a quiz on Friday. This is Tuesday." I remind him, "Hey, make sure you study." So I'm kind of there to support it. But in phys ed, I don't really have a connection to phys ed at school.
Right.
So this is a way to get the parent involved, because now I can see, like, "Hey, you got this new platform at school, like, show it to me," so I can pull it up on their phone or their computer or whatever, and then be like, "Yeah, this is like all the things we're doing in phys ed right now." Be like, "Cool, what's that?" Like, "Oh, it's a breathing exercise." Well, can I see it? Can I try it? Like, as a parent now, I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. They're giving you breathing. They're teaching you how to do breathing drills." I'm like, "Why do you learn breathing drills?" I'm like, "Oh, so because if you actually learn how to control your breath, you can actually control your state, so you can bring down your anxiety levels." And now as a parent, I'm actually engaged in it. The students now empowered because they're teaching me something new. And that's how these habits and these lifestyles become ingrained in these kids, right?
Right.
So it's really exciting. It's lots of fun, tons of challenges. Never thought I would be in the tech industry, not a tech guy. So tons of challenges. Um, Building something to scale globally too is not something I've ever done. So
Mhm.
huge challenges there. Um, but I have this framework of, you know, positivity that I built as a kid through, always taking care of my health, and I'm able to just kind of keep marching along, and it's pretty cool. It's a great feeling. It's making a great impact, and it's an exciting thing to be a part of all the time, for sure.
Yeah, no.
Really,
Yeah, I can imagine because just hearing that when your kids are talking about breathing exercises, I was like, I didn't know what those were until I was like 23. Like breathing
yeah,
exercises. No, we never learned any of that. So that is so important because it takes that it takes it home with you, like you said, instead of making it like oh, school's making me do this. It's like integrating it into your life and making it valuable. I love everything about that, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, thanks. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to the next 5 years to see how much of an impact we can make. We got some pretty audacious goals, so we'll see. We'll see we can get there. We got a
Yeah.
great team, so I'm sure we'll get there. So
Yeah, for sure. Now, for anyone listening, where can they find the platform? Where can they find you? Where can they keep up to date with everything?
um, I think uh, I'm not really good with social media. So the only social media I do personally is I am on LinkedIn. So you can just look up Callen McGibbon on LinkedIn, and you can find me there, and you can shoot me a message or whatever. We can connect, and I'd be happy to talk to any of your listeners. No problem. I'd love to connect and talk. Um, as with respect to what Rep is doing, just REPerformanceApp.com. So REPER. It's Rep and then performance, but only one P. App.com. Just go to our website. Links to all our social media channels are there. Stuff we post, questions we ask, things we've tried to probe conversations around. Everything's right there. So you can launch a question, go through the community inbox. It'll get to me, and away we go from there.
Awesome, man. And I'll put those links down below. Callen, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a blast.
Well, thanks very much for having me, and it was cool to chat with you.
Of course.
I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. And to all my listeners, I will see you guys next time. And remember that swimmers are the smartest.